Hello and welcome to today's Aquila University training seminar. We're discussing the publishing method known as SaaS, Software as a Service, also known as the cloud. A quick note, we are recording this session and it will be put up on our website. If you have concerns about anyone seeing your name, your questions, and more importantly, any answers, then please disconnect now, and I will send you an email when this is up and available for you to view. As a note, we're talking about different publishing services, and Aquila does, or different publishing systems, and Aquila offers publishing services. Anything you hear in this talk is just our personal opinion, and every selection you make should certainly be taken with your company's needs in mind. My name is Josh Boutwell, and I founded Aquila Solutions in 2010. Since then, we've been helping dozens of companies not just create and manage their applications, but also some transition to internal support from an outsourcing partner like Aquila. A brief overview of today's topics. We will discuss the 4 primary publishing methods, with some detail about what a SaaS system is, talk about your installation and validation requirements, cost calculations, and of course our pros and cons. After that, please ask any questions you like, and we'll talk about our next training session. Publishing methods for ECTD all have the same requirements. One, you have to be able to integrate your regulatory strategy. You have to be able to know that you're doing a 505(b)(1) versus a B2 versus an ANDA, and how you plan to approach your submissions. Be able to do life cycle planning. You tend to have a new indication or a new dosage form attached to this application in the future. How are you going to handle when documents need to be changed? Some project management involved. Our publishing projects are large. A typical new drug application, 505(b)(1) or B2, are usually around 2,000 man-hours worth of time once the documents have been authored. This is not talking about writing the documents or doing the research or doing the math. We're just talking about taking the Word documents and getting them to a form that the FDA will accept. Man-hours. Some document tracking, you need to make sure that you're submitting the right documents. Document remediation, this is where you take your documents and you put in your bookmarks and your links and break them up or combine them based on granularity rules, all that sort of fun stuff. Need to QC your submission. And finally, you need to get it to the FDA or whoever else you're sending it to, and maintain coherent copies of your applications long term. There are 4 primary methods. The simplest or the cheapest is the desktop method, but it's not very comprehensive. Most expensive is the enterprise method. That is where you have multiple servers all installed on your local system, in your office or one of your affiliates, and it's managed by your own team. There's sourcing, which use a publishing partner to do all the work for you. That's easily the simplest, but necessarily the cheapest. And finally, there's the compromise between outsourcing and enterprise, which is software as a service. SaaS is essentially an enterprise system that is installed and managed elsewhere. So what precisely is it? stands for software as a service. It said someone else installs the software, typically vendor, and you rent access to it, usually on a per-user basis or per access basis. I've seen some that are per submission, but it's basically you are renting access to their system. The capabilities of typical SaaS systems manage all the documents. You upload the documents, and they handle the document, the storage of them, and the processing of them. They bookmarks and links. It creates the backbone for you. It will provide a lifecycle view where it shows you what's current in all the different sequences that you've sent. And it controls access to submissions, so you don't necessarily want everyone in your company to have access to it. And finally, it helps integrate the authoring activities. This last point, it really varies depending on the software. It can be very helpful and range to very cumbersome. This general layout of a system is the publisher and the reviewer and your file system. These connect to the SaaS server. This is by the vendor. You have hired Acme SaaS Publishing. You would connect to their computer directly. Computer connect to wherever their system is installed. And there's usually a web interface. It usually is a pass-through from their SaaS server through the web interface, which also has a database and a render and a file server. Now, what is always concerning is that top bracket doesn't be with the vendor systems, and there is no way for you to know one or another if they decide not to tell you. Honestly, usually these are third-party systems. It's not uncommon to be Amazon or Google, but there's no guarantee. It could be anyone. It could be some IT guy running a server farm out of his basement. I have seen that happen. Some common components. These are the common components of SaaS systems are, of course, your web server. This is how you interface with it. They also have a database system, some document servers to do the document processing, and they may have an ECTD viewer. Some do, some don't. It's not uncommon for them to have it. Some additional components that you will need. One, you will need your own file system. Everything, you can't just upload your entire folder system to them and expect them to handle it. You have to have copies of your documents locally. You need templates. You need some instructions on how to write your applications. Use PDF tools. While the server may manage your bookmarks and links, a lot of times you can't create them, or can't effectively create them using a web interface. You get them locally, and then you upload the changes. And you need a good set of PDF tools, and it can be very expensive, on the order of $4,000 per user. Then finally, if the SaaS system doesn't come with a viewer, you need to procure an ECTD viewer. So, installation and validation. The wonderful thing about SaaS is there is no dedicated hardware. You have to go out and buy a server for it. And it's just a web page that you connect to and talk. Your system talks with it. You'll need moderate IT support to set it up. You make sure that everything talks to each other correctly, that all the ports are open, that you have enough bandwidth, all that sort of stuff. You need some validation. Now, unlike an enterprise system, you probably don't need nearly as comprehensive a validation program, and you can't do an IQ. But you will need to do at least an OQ, and probably it is highly advisable to do a PQ as well. Like any other major system, you need training and workflow development. My experience has been it takes companies 2 to 4 months to fully validate and integrate a SaaS-based system to Part 11 compliance. Because the vendor says they are Part 11 compliant does not mean you don't have to validate. What means is that they have done an IQ on their installation. So they were audited by the FDA. If they were inspected by the FDA, they pass Part 11 compliance. That doesn't mean that if you're inspected, you would pass Part 11 compliance. Systems are very similar to enterprise systems. They really are just an enterprise system that's been installed elsewhere, and you get a login to the website. Now, in mind, you do have to spend a lot of time make sure the workflow for your new system is in place correctly. There are a few things that hurt applications more than a company just adopting the best practices from their vendor without thinking about them. You have to understand that what they recommend will not work for you without modification. SaaS systems still require extensive publishing experience. Just any other publishing system, you need 2 publishers to manage your applications. Someone with enough experience to know that it's being put together correctly, and someone with enough experience to be able to QC what the other person does, and to function as a backup when they go on vacation. Your software, and it doesn't matter what software you buy, can guide your submissions. It doesn't have a brain. Someone with experience to understand what go together and what can't, and the consequences of doing things one way versus another. You need to have backup against outages. They're relying on complex systems that are to a dozen steps away through networks you have no control over. That's what the internet is. And it's not uncommon for things to go down. And then this is just a pure project management. Someone needs to manage these large projects and be someone with knowledge. Cost calculations. You've got your initial purchase price and setup costs. You've got validation every 18 to 24 months. And the way I say that is these standards and the systems are being upgraded on a routine basis. Since last year, the FDA released a new Module 1, and in order to use that, you have to do significant upgrades to your changes to the software, which you need to revalidate. In maybe 2 years, we're likely to see RPS come out, and that's another revalidation. Even a whole new system. And so you can expect to do some sort of validation every couple of years. You need IT support even though you're not hosting it locally. Again, you need a minimum of 2 publishers. You'll need extensive training of all authors. And this is in order to be able to use the tools that this system provides. You have to write things in a way the system will understand. using their formats, their requirements. Of course, there are additional software packages you'll need to buy in order to effectively use the system. So initial cost, we estimate about $25,000 for the initial setup. This is for any onboarding costs as well as validation costs for your OQ and PQ. You can expect this to take 2 to 4 months. Secondary software, this is any viewer or validation software for ECTDs, as well as PDF tools and various other miscellaneous things. And that's about $10,000, about $5,000 per publisher, and assume $5,000 per person. For secondary software, $5,000 per seat, I apologize, in secondary software. And overall cost, training costs are probably about $10,000 for everyone who's going to be involved in your in authoring or reviewing your application. For the annual costs, generally we found the annual cost to be between $3,000 and $5,000 per user, per seat, with a minimum of 2. You have to have 2. And then revalidation costs, every time you revalidate, you can assume it'll be about 20. So average maybe 10,000, maybe 8,000 per year. So you're looking at about $15,000 in annual costs for a basic SaaS publishing system. What are the pros and cons? Again, these are our opinions, and while we stand behind them, other people may have slightly different lists. So pros, minimum startup costs. Compared to other internal publishing systems, SaaS stands up very well. There are advanced ECTD design guidelines built into the system. That's an enterprise-based system. It's very complex. It is designed to be as all-encompassing as possible. Then finally, it's easy to expand. Just call them up and buy a new seat, and now you don't have to worry about upgrades, hardware changes, anything like that. It's nice and simple. The cons. Number one, cannot emphasize this enough, is security. You are entertaining huge risks when you use SaaS systems. Number two, there are poor capabilities during crunch time. By crunch time, you mean usually the last 2 weeks of any major submission. As the fundamental issue with all off-site work. It's relatively expensive. Per seat, and the startup costs are low. You grow it very quickly, become far more expensive than desktop and even enterprise and even outsourcing. It's a very expensive proposition. And then finally, because you don't have any control of the servers and the system, it's often very difficult to customize it, which means it's very difficult to integrate it with your work, with the workflows that work best for you. Now, I talk about security. The reason security is such an issue is that you have no control over your data once it's in their system. Once you upload it, you know where it goes. All you know, you uploaded it to a website. Times it's stored on Amazon and Google, and other times it's in India in a, like I said, in some basement. There's no way for you as the sponsor to know, to prevent from going there. Just remember, vendor profits are extremely tightly linked to the cost of data centers. You can squeeze any savings out of the data center costs, that's directly in their pockets. And to the excellent article that read about this, which is available here, but you know it's true when Gilbert talks about it. Migrated their data center to the cloud, but the cloud stopped working, and I can't find the phone number for our cloud guy, so, whatever. And apparently they lost their data center. Now, just imagine if it's an application for your make-or-break drug for your company. All of a sudden, it's gone. Now, poor capabilities during crunch time. Every change you do to an application requires at least 6 transfers of the file. One initial upload, then there's the download for processing, then you put in your links, you do your actual publishing work, you do the changes, you download the review, upload any further changes, and then download for submission. If everything goes precisely right. Yes. Most documents end up having 2 updates. We are now looking at 10 transfers. By itself, for small submissions, this doesn't really make a difference. But applications can be huge. Last year, we worked on a 16 gigabyte submission, which was 1.1 million pages. To give you an idea, most businesses use a 25 megabit per second, which takes you about an hour to transfer a gigabyte. And that's all well and good unless you're in the last day of your submission and you're having to do lots of uploads and downloads to a server in some guy's basement in India. You end up adding a huge amount of risk to your project just through data transfer, even security, but just trying to get stuff up and down. Compares with local servers over a LAN, which operate at least 100 megabits per second, and it's much more common to have 1 gigabit per second. We're talking, a minute or two to upload the entire 10 gigabyte, transfer your entire 10 gigabyte submission. That's a huge difference. Our advice: don't system. They don't help. Maybe you are only saving on equipment, which honestly is relatively cheap, and IQ validation costs, which are almost non-existent, really. These require the same number of people. It's expensive per person. It has risk, all of that. But the best reason is I've known a dozen companies that have tried SaaS-based systems. They have universally had a bad experience. It doesn't provide what they're looking for. They end up canceling it after a couple of years. And then on top of that, while very expensive, as you grow, you'll very quickly get to the point where it'd be far more cost-effective to have a locally based system, an enterprise-based system for your work. Or it's you're a small company with 1 or 2 INDs that aren't very active. There's no reason to spend that money every month for your SaaS subscription plus your publishers and all your software. I've not run across a single case where software as a service is a good solution for ECTD publishing. Are there any questions? I look forward to seeing you for our last publishing method seminar. We will be discussing working with a publishing partner. This is also known as outsourcing. You'll learn about what publishing partners actually do. You can integrate them into your organization, and what are some of the advantages and problems of using publishing partners. I'll be holding it January 29th at 2 p.m., and I hope you will be able to join us for attending this talk.